church back in 2005. And here we are, 12 years later, married for almost 9 years. 2 kids and a dog. We live a comfortable life. We chose a life in faith. We married in the Catholic Church, for better or worse, in sickness and in health, for richer or poorer. I promise to love you, even when my world comes crashing down around me and I forget who I am or what I believe in. The truth is, life's not a fairy tale. We were engaged to be married when my sister Leanne was diagnosed with leukemia and passed away 6 months after we were married. This was my older sibling, my role model, and one of my best friends. She was only recently married when she got sick and suffered her illness for over a year. It was then that I witnessed firsthand the power of marriage. I watched as her husband stood by her every step of the way until the very end and beyond. I was in awe of this demonstration of love and could only hope my own marriage would exist unconditionally in this way. Her death brought devastation and pain beyond measure. I couldn't imagine life without her. At the lowest points in life, we question God, and at the same time, we turn to God. We are in the most contradicting state of mind. We wonder why things go wrong when we choose to follow God's way. But we miraculously pick ourselves up and move on. We find reason and purpose. We struggle, we take risks, we lean on each other, we survive. For me, to be truthful, I could have easily given up on life at that time. But I was needed by my family, especially my parents. They'd lost their daughter. How would they get through? I had a new role. I had to be there for them as they looked for reason and negotiated their dark path. I leaned on my husband and his family as my safety net. My mother-in-law had lost her brother. Her story was companionship in mine.
Life's big decisions come with risk and an element of opportunity cost. That is the loss of the path not taken. Education choices, career choices, relationship choices. Personally, one of the biggest risks I feel we take is that of bringing a child into the world and starting a family. This might sound odd. How is that risky? It's a beautiful and natural thing, and that most couples do as part of their life's journey. Certainly that's what I thought. Marry, enjoy each other's exclusive love and companionship for a few years, and then have children. But what if the script doesn't go to plan? What if we can't have children? What if we can, but they get sick? What if we lose them? Is the love and joy we experience worth the risk of losing them? The answer is absolutely. Because regardless of how they come into this world and what challenges they face, when they get here, they are a miracle, a gift from God, and every life gifted from God is a life worth living. Some may disagree. I know Jodie and I would have a couple of years ago when our 2-month-old son suffered a stroke during his second life-saving surgery. It was at this lowest point, being told our son would likely be blind and have developmental disabilities on top of existing physical defects, we were united in believing he would be best off being taken into God's loving arms. We prayed every day. How ironic. We completely lost our faith in God, but at the same time, we were asking God to help us, be with us, be with our son, help carry us through this living hell. We grappled onto every last fragment of hope. We hadn't already mentioned that we already had another child, Leanne, who at Adrian's birth was 15 and a half months old. She was a massive source of hope and purpose to get through this time. Our families, despite sharing the pain, were also paramount in supporting us when our belief was at its all-time low. I can say that my mum was actually beyond the point of being positive. She was frustrating. How could you be so sure that Adrian, our little guy, would be okay when all the doctors were warning us of the worst? There was no light at the end of the tunnel, or was there?
Let me backtrack a bit on Adrian's life. We were halfway through the pregnancy with him when we found out our child had serious life-threatening birth defects. This innocent unborn child would need surgery at birth. How do a young couple like ourselves even comprehend processing news like that? The day before, you could have said life was perfect. We had a beautiful, healthy 1-year-old daughter, Liana, who somewhat restored the faith that was lost after the death of my sister, Leanne. Despite the serious conditions inside his unborn body, Adrian came into the world in a pretty standard way, but his journey from this point onwards was not so standard. He was born with a rare condition known to medical science as lateral association, a cluster of birth defects which affected his renal, skeletal, digestive and respiratory systems. The seriousness of his case was an incomplete esophagus and abnormal trachea, the organs our bodies rely on to eat and breathe. Logically, it sounded that Adrian was not compatible with life. But living in a country like Australia means we have access to some of the world's best healthcare and medical technology. Our son was given a second chance at life, and he took it. He had surgery one day after birth, a 6-hour operation. We hadn't had the chance to fall in love with Adrian yet. He was taken from us as soon as he was born. In a way, this was a good thing, not having the time to bond. Maybe it would have been too much. I just remember the disconnection of being in one hospital and him being taken to another. I'd had a baby, but I didn't have a baby with me. Had I bonded, this could have been the emptiest feeling of my life. I remember praying continuously, but I'm not exactly sure what I was praying for. I wanted him to survive, yes, but I wanted him to be perfectly normal. I didn't imagine that I could cope with anything less. I guess I was then just praying for peace, that whatever was meant to be, would be, and that we would somehow get through it.
Today we have a thriving 2-year-old son. Yes, he has challenges, but this young human being has taught us that so much about how precious life is. He's a figure of strength and resilience, and truly a blessing in our lives. We don't deny that we have been through the dark times, but somehow the darkest times of our lives have shaped us to what and where we are today. And what and where we are today is not a place with all the answers. In some ways, we have less answers than we thought we would. Rather, what and where we are today is a place where it asks different questions about our faith and its role in determining outcomes. What about people who have little Adrians who didn't survive? I'm sure many of them had faith. We know they did. We walked with them in friendship. We shared our hearts in distress while our children fought for their lives. We know that the outcomes of such faith don't always equate to the measure of good faith. These were good people and they lost their children. So what are my answers or our answers to this? I still don't know. What I think I do know is that faith is more about the way we come through than necessarily being about the outcomes we so deeply hope for. I think it's true to say that I now have more faith in unexpected possibilities, about not trying to predict the shape of the outcome. Our obvious outcome is that our little man did survive. The shape of that outcome is a bunch of challenges that I would never have entertained dealing with. But this is the shape that has echoed something so loudly in us. It has echoed an enormity of love in us that I could never have imagined. I only hope, if only we could bottle up the pain and emotion we felt back then and use it as fuel for life right now. and perhaps that is just what we're doing. Perhaps that is exactly the fruit of faith in us right now. We still struggle. Adrian chokes regularly. He struggles to eat because his esophagus at the side of the repair is quite narrow. We watch him vigilantly while he eats, just in case we need to intervene. Some chokes are worse than others. It's incredibly difficult to watch helplessly as a 2-year-old struggles to gasp for air and clear his airway. But it's in these moments that the darkness clouds upon us. We see ourselves, though, return to the day he was born, briefly losing sight of all we have achieved until now. And with every choking episode he has and gets through, we see him rise above it with his incredible strength and determination. These are the raw materials through which I'm continuing to ponder the force of faith in my life. We've faced many challenges throughout the duration of our marriage, but all couples do in some form or another. Marriage is not easy. It takes work, commitment, and mutual willingness to make it work, even when the odds are against you. We've taken risks, but we've also been rewarded. There are times when we question our existence and the purpose of our lives here on earth. As a couple, we are one, but within our marriage, there are two individual people who experience pain and emotion in different ways. So undoubtedly, there are moments where we are not united in our thoughts and feelings. Where we are at is trying to find how our faith speaks to us and how it gives us cohesion, even in and especially in our differences. We are striving to welcome the God who knows each of us in our differences, who created us in our differences, but who in it is our common source of life, love, and strength.
When I now compare the faith I had before my sister Leanne was diagnosed with where I am now, there are certainly some differences. There's been a lot of water under the bridge. I had strong devotions. I was passionate about my faith. In some ways, you could have said that I've weakened in the faith if you applied some obvious measures. But at 30 years of age, the experiences that are feeding my questions and connection to faith are very different to what life had been before. Michael has shared how he is seeing faith now, and that's more as a way of living through all that life holds rather than about the outcomes we imagine and hope for. When I attend the sacraments now, I know that the life of faith can't be taken out of me. But before, even though I meant it and was committed to it, it was the faith that my grandmother had given me and that she had raised me in. And I love her for that and I'm thankful. But it also had to and has to become my faith. Yes, for sure, some of my questions and experiences have led me to run from it. But try as I might, it is in the moments of joy and of connections in love that keep me alive to the God presence in my life. As is true for Michael in his way, my continuing challenge is to allow my experiences of life's light and its struggle to connect me with God. With God who I believe came to earth and lived a life of both light and struggle to make connection with us.